All right, slides are up. Good morning, everyone. Did everyone have a good time at the party last night? All right. I thought it was spectacular. I'm still trying to figure out how you did some of those tricks. Let me know if you have tips. All right. Let's dig right in. So my name is Anant. I'm a developer evangelist at Firebase. My primary job is to talk to developers, help them understand how Firebase works, and help them build world-class applications. Before this, I was at Mozilla, where I did a bunch of stuff. I worked on the WebRTC spec, implemented open web apps, worked on Firefox OS. So I've been doing web stuff for a while. But today, I'm going to be talking to you about how to build real-time apps with Angular and Firebase. So let me give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover today. So first thing I'll cover, what Firebase is exactly. Some of you may have questions about how it works and what it is and how it can help you. Secondly, we'll go into what the role of a backend in an Angular app is and what it means to integrate a backend into an Angular app. And then finally, this is my favorite part, we're going to do some live coding. And we're going to build an app together with Firebase and Angular. And we're going to get something working. It's going to be good. And then we have a special surprise. So we have a special announcement. We want to make sure to stick around for that. It's going to be pretty amazing. Cool. So before I dig into what Firebase is exactly, I want to just take a step back and take a 10,000-foot overview about the evolution of web apps and what we've seen happen over the last decade or so. So first, the primordial being, DHTML. Do people remember that? With your blink tag and your marquee tags. VBScript was around for a while. Web wasn't really meant to be an app platform. It was just a document delivery system. And it was good at that. It was great. But then something changed. The IE monopoly got broken. Firefox came on the landscape. And then most recently, Chrome. Everything's just heated up. And then we saw a really rapid evolution. A lot of the thanks goes to jQuery, which many of you love and use. But jQuery is still, it abstracts over all the browser inconsistencies, but it is still fundamentally just a way to manipulate the DOM. So while it was great, it's still not an app framework. You use it to change stuff after stuff has been downloaded from the server. So it's basically a DOM manipulation thing, and that's great. That's fine. But then people said, OK, we need to make the web a real app platform, like compared to the so-called native app platforms. And there were multiple attempts at this. Some of you may remember Dojo Toolkit, YUI, all of these frameworks that came, UI plugins and things like that, that tried to make the web more of an app framework. And so we've sort of seen this gradual evolution. And we think that we're sort of at the pinnacle of the evolution right now, which is our Angular superhero. So you're all here because you're at the forefront of what it means to develop apps for the web. So that's kind of the pinnacle of evolution as far as the front end of web apps are concerned. And that's why you're all here. You all know and love Angular. It is a complete app platform. It's not just manipulating the DOM, delivering documents, or anything like that. You build real apps with it. So this is what's been going on in the back end. We can kind of correlate this to what's been happening. So this is what's been going on in the front end. We can correlate that to what's been happening in the back end. So the primordial being there was you wanted to launch a web app. You needed to hire a bunch of sysadmins, rent real physical servers that some of you may have seen. And there's wires behind. There's Ethernet cords and all of that. You have to go to the data center, things like that. That was a long time ago. And it was a high barrier to entry. And then virtualization came along. And then people are saying, hey, this virtualization thing is really cool. I can be sitting in my office. And I can spin up servers, no problem. Amazon jumped right on it. A lot of you are probably using it. That's great. That's fantastic. But you still need to hire sysadmins to manage all of these provision servers. You still need to have all kinds of scripts. Netflix is famous for their blog series about how to just manage Amazon AWS. And it's still a lot of work. And then we saw this next step in the evolution, which is platform as a service. So Heroku came along and said, hey, I don't want you to think about machines or virtualization or provisioning. I want you to think about your back-end code. And so you wrote this Ruby on Rails app. You wrote this Django app. And you would just push code into Git repos. And Heroku would take care of deploying them for you. That's a great step forward. But when you think about it, all web apps do is basically talk to the server over some kind of REST API and do some set of CRUD operations. And so one naturally thinks, is there a way to abstract that into a service? And that, we believe, is the pinnacle of the evolution on the back-end side. Firebase. So you've got the pinnacle evolution on the front end, which is Angular, and the pinnacle of evolution on the back end side, which we think is Firebase. So you combine these two together to make really amazing web apps. And so you're all here because you believe in Angular, and so we think that you'll really like Firebase as well, because they're both around the same evolution step. So Firebase, what is it? Some of you may know us from the AngularJS homepage. The wire up backend example is written using Firebase. Some of you may have heard of us at the keynote yesterday. Some of you may have met us in person at the booth. But I really just want to dig into a very concise format what it is. So Firebase is a real-time application platform. And so there's 3 pillars to this. The first one, at the core of what we do, is an API to store and sync data in real time. So we store bits of JSON, you send them to our servers, we store them, and we also synchronize them in real time, which means that when one client changes one piece of data, all the other clients subscribing to that data are going to be notified nearly instantly. The second pillar is a set of services. Simple login is one of these, which allow you to easily authenticate users. Most web apps these days need their user to first log in to do some kind of action. And so we provide a service to do that without any backend code. So you don't really need to write any code at all. You just configure your Firebase to say, I want to use Facebook login or GitHub login or Twitter persona email addresses or just regular email address and password and so forth. And then finally, we have a flexible security system. So you're thinking, hey, if I'm talking to an API directly from my web app and there's no backend code to sit in the middle, who's going to enforce all my securities, like security characteristics of your app? What pieces of data do users have access to and which they don't? So the answer to that is you write declarative security rules. And as we all know, declarative is really awesome. You write declarative security rules, you send them to Firebase, and then we enforce them on your behalf when people are trying to read and write data. So now I want to dig into what the role of a backend in Angular is. So this is certainly one of my favorite features of Angular, which is the two-way data binding. Some of you might like it as well. And so this is an image you all know from Brad and Misko's talk. I've borrowed it. So the way two-way data binding works is you've got some DOM elements, you've got some models in JavaScript, and you want to keep both of those in sync. So let's take a quick example of how this works. So you all know the canonical example here. We've got an NG model name, and then I'm binding that to H1, right? So I say, hi, NG-Conf. And that changes. Great. This is awesome. One of my favorite features of Angular. A lot of you are using it just for this, right? But you notice if I open this same page in another different browser or different tab, it's not going to change. Naturally, you wouldn't expect it to, because the two-way data binding is local to that client. That's fine. You're expected to then send that data to the server somewhere and then synchronize it to other clients if you need it. So that's what the role of a backend is. And so we've been thinking about this for a while and said, OK, how can we take this and plug this in with Firebase in a way that feels really awesome? And so what we call three-way data binding. I'm particularly proud of this phrase, especially because yesterday there was a gentleman at breakfast that says, this is a phrase my manager is going to love, three-way data binding. So you can go back and say, hey, I learned about three-way data binding. So what is three-way data binding? You're taking the DOM elements, you're synchronizing them with the JS models. That's great. Angular does that for you. But then you take the same data and then you synchronize with the remote database automatically. And so when you extend this three-way data binding, what you see is if multiple clients are talking to the same Firebase, the same data is available to all of those clients seamlessly. So to concretize this example, if you have something on scope, so let's take this example over here on the right-hand side. On the top right and bottom right, I have the same page open, but it's using Firebase to do the three-way data sync. And on the left-hand side, I have my Firebase open, so the Firebase that's kind of backing that web page. So notice what happens in all of these corners when I type something in this text box. I say, hi, NG-Conf, and it's appearing on all the places. This is without much work for you. So the code for this is literally over here. It is 4 lines. Don't worry too much about what that code is. We're going to do a live code example so you can really understand how it actually works. But that's the basic concept. If I change anything in any one of the 3 places, it's going to instantly reflect everywhere else. So this, we think, is really powerful, and it's really at the underpinning of what an integration between Firebase and Angular looks like, the three-way data binding. So you're all saying, OK, Anant, you said something about a live coding session. Talk is cheap. Show me the code. So I'm going to dig into that. But first, let's decide what we want to build. I'm sure many of you have been on YouTube. I have. And I was seeing YouTube, and I'm reading the comments. And I always feel like, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if I could just really understand what people are trying to say about this video in real time? These comments are so insightful. The wisdom of the internet. I just can't, I don't want to refresh my page to see these comments right now. I'm sure many of you felt the same way, right? So we're going to build a video commenting app, right? So there's a video on the page, and then we're going to have a comment box right at the bottom. And we're going to make it so that whenever someone submits a comment, it's going to appear on the comment list in real time without refreshing the page. So everybody who's viewing the video at the same time can just have those comments update really nicely. And of course, this is a really good fit for both Angular and Firebase. So why don't we do that? So in the interest of time, I already have a template to start with. So I have two files open in my text editor. I have an index.html and I have a firetube.js. So let's go over this code, and we'll code as we go. So nothing really special, nothing surprising to the audience what's in the HTML file, right? So we've got an ng app, firetube, that's all standard. I have a bunch of script includes. So these are all the frameworks that we're going to use. So I have AngularJS, I have Firebase.js, and I've got AngularFire.js. So now you might be asking, what is this AngularFire.js? So AngularFire is a library that helps you integrate Firebase with Angular. So Firebase itself is a JavaScript library, as you can see, and you can obviously use the Firebase API directly from Angular. But we thought, OK, it would be better if we can give you tools to make some of the boilerplate code easier. So you need to include both Firebase and Angular. So they're available on the CDN, but you can also include them in your Bower dependency and whatnot. And then firetube.js is where our app code lives, nothing surprising. And then I have a simple style sheet. OK, so let's pretend that that image tag over there is where our video is being rendered. And below that, we have a comment box that's div id equals comments. So let's start rendering the comments. So I'm going to say div class equals comment, just so the CSS looks nice. And then you all know this, ng repeat, nothing surprising here. I'm going to say comment in comments. So let's, for now, assume that in scope.comments, we're going to populate a collection of comments. And we'll look into how we do that later. But for now, we're just going to iterate over it. And then I'm just going to render it. So I'm going to put the name of the person who made the comment, so comment.from, and then comment.body. So then I'm going to close this bowl, maybe put a line break, and then close up the span. Awesome. So nothing spectacular is happening here. Just using ng repeat, iterating over the comments, and rendering them. That's great. Now that's the read part. Let's do the write part. So you want a text box where the user enters a comment, and then when they press the enter key, you want to post the comment to the list. So we're going to do that in this text wrap area. So I'm going to make a text area. Nothing special here. I'm going to say ng model, new comment. So I'm going to store the contents of this text area in this scope variable. And then I'm going to use ng key down to say, OK, whenever the user presses the enter key, that's when I want to trigger the comment go into the server. So I'm just going to use ng key down for that. And I'm going to call a function that we haven't written yet. Let's assume that we call it add comment. And then we'll pass it the event so that we know if they've pressed the enter key or not. All of this is pretty standard Angular, right? Nothing really surprising here, which is the nice part. When you integrate Firebase with Angular, you really don't have to change anything in the HTML. All your Angular stuff looks exactly the same. So I'm going to save this file. Now I'm going to go to the JavaScript file. So this is just an empty module with an empty controller, no dependencies so far. And this is really where the magic kicks in. So let's go into what happens here. So I've included AngularFire.js. It gives me a module called Firebase. So I'm going to add that as a dependency. That's great. Nothing surprising. And then I want to add $Firebase as a dependency, which thanks to Angular's DI, that's just going to get injected into my controller. So now I have this $Firebase service available in my controller. And that's really at the core. So that I'm going to use that $Firebase service to do this server interaction. So if you remember, we stored all the comments in the comment scope, or scope model. So we're going to say scope.comments equals $Firebase. And it's going to be passed a reference. Now let's talk about what that reference is. The reference is a reference to a URL, which is a Firebase. And all pieces of data in Firebase are represented by a URL. So for purposes of this demo, I've already created a Firebase at HTTPS ng-conf.firebase.io.com. And we're just going to store it at the root of this Firebase, because this Firebase is just dedicated to only storing comments. So that's no problem. I've done that. OK. So that's it. Now scope.comments is going to contain all the comments that are stored in Firebase, and so our rendering, our ng repeat is going to work out of the box. The one thing we need to add is our add comment function. So I'm going to do that by saying scope.addComment equals function. It takes an event. I only want this function to execute if the enter key is pressed. So I just kind of memorized 13 here. So if it's not enter key, don't bother. If it is, then let's add the comment. OK, so now to add the comment, we have special methods on this model that you bound using the $Firebase service. And one of them is called add. There are others. There's update, remove, all the kinds of CRUD operations that you typically might want to do. And this guy takes an object, so I'm going to create an object. Now, if you recall back in the markup, we had from and the body. So I'm going to say from scope.username. We haven't defined what scope.username is. We'll get to that in a bit. And then, of course, the body is going to be the content of the text area, which is simply scope.newComment. Easy as that. Now, of course, you want to clear the text area. Thanks to two-way data binding, that's super simple. I just need to say scope.newComment, empty string, and that's going to clear the text area after the users enter the comment. That's awesome. All right, one piece that's missing, we need to create the username variable. I'm just going to assign a random username. So for now, we'll just say guest math.floor, math.random. Side note, do not use math.random in production code. So I'm going to say math.random and say into 101. So that's going to create any number, guest 42, guest 57, whatever, right? Cool, awesome. So that's all. That's all there is to it, to integrating Firebase with Angular using the Angular Fire service. So now let's actually run it and see what happens. So on the right-hand side, I've opened the ng-conf.firebase.io.com on the right-hand side. And then over here, I'm going to just run this thing. All right, so that image is the last Twinkie on Earth. I'm really dying to tell the internet what I think about this Twinkie. This looks delicious. So now note what happens when, apparently I can't spell today. All right, so now note what happens when I press the enter key. See the comment appear in your Firebase with the random ID. That $add function does that. It automatically generates a random thing so that you can create distributed lists. You can't really use an array for this because if multiple people are trying to write the same array, there's a high chance that they're going to overwrite each other. So array indexes are not really good. So we take care of the distributed aspect of this. Now, of course, if I open the same URL in a different place, not only does the previous comment appear, but then when I type another comment here, it's going to appear in real time on this side. So that's really the power of three-way data binding. And it was really easy to get started, hardly a dozen lines of code. Just drop in your JavaScript libraries or frameworks and things like that. So that's Angular Fire in action. OK, so now I'm thinking, I want you guys to participate in this. That's running on my local server, but how do I put this on the public internet so that you guys can tell me what you think about Twinkies? I am dying to know. So remember that GIF we talked about over there? I think it's time to open it. All right. So I'm really proud to announce a product called Firebase Hosting. Now, any self-respecting software product will have the beta label on it. So it's Firebase Hosting Beta. So this is a preview. You're one of the first people to learn about this service. In case the name's not clear, it is hosting for your app and static assets on firebaseapp.com. So it's really easy for you to push your JavaScript, HTML, all of your images, all of your assets that go with your single-page app, and just post it to firebaseapp.com. It's available starting today, and all for the very low price of free. Custom domains are coming soon. It's already over HTTPS if you want to serve over HTTPS, myapp.firebaseapp.com. So deploying your Angular app has never been easier. Let me show you just how easy it is. So I'm going to open up my console here. And so here are the files that we had earlier, just HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Just like how you say git init, I'm going to say Firebase init. So Firebase is a command line tool. You can install it really easily using npm, npm-g, install Firebase-tools. And you're going to get access to this command line tool. And this is primarily how you're going to interact with our hosting service. So I say Firebase init. I'm already logged in. I'm going to associate that app with my NG-Conf Firebase that I already created. I'm going to upload all the directories in this directory, all the files in this directory. No security rules for now. It's initializing. Great. Now I want to say, I want to deploy this to the internet. So I'm going to say Firebase deploy. That's it. Just 2 steps. It's deploying. And now my app is available on ng-conf.firebaseapp.com. You can all go to this URL and participate right now. Oh, somebody already posted. I found it first. No way. So all of you can participate, and you'll see all the comments appear in real time. No page refresh, nothing. It's all happening in real time thanks to Angular and Firebase. So I think we're running out of time. So that's all I have for now. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So you want to learn more about static hosting. You want to learn more about simple login. We have an Angular starter pack that's just a lot of real-world examples of how to use Angular Fire. So we have a feed reader example, a to-do MVC port. Of course, everyone does that, and a whole bunch of stuff. We have Yeoman integration. So if you have Yo Angular in your build script, you can say Yo Angular Fire and just get Angular Fire plopped in. Your bower will be updated and all of that. For that one gentleman yesterday who raised their hand that he was using Dart, we also have Angular Fire Dart, Dart integration, first class in Firebase. So if you want to learn more about that, come talk to us. And lots more. So you can find all of these resources on firebase.com/Angular. You can tweet us at Firebase. And of course, we're going to be around. We're all in the yellow T-shirts. Well, actually, 3 of us in yellow T-shirts and 1 in the pink T-shirt. And we're going to be around at the booth. And of course, there's a Q&A session right across the hall after this talk. So we're going to be around for the whole conference. Please feel free to come by and talk to us about Firebase and Angular. That's all I have. Thank you.